Gather round, young ones, and still your restless feet. The night grows deep, and the fire burns low, perfect for a tale that needs shadows to dance as it's told. Those giggles I hear, quiet them now, for this is no ordinary story of knights and dragons that your mothers whisper at bedtime. This is the tale of Empress Diedre and her Grand Marshal Validus, and of a love so fierce it turned the tide of war. Aye, some of you may have heard their names whispered in the halls of the imperial keep, seen their statues standing tall in the central square. But do you know of the day when their love shook the very foundations of our empire? When their rage became legend? See those strange lights that dance in the heavens? The ones your parents call the Marshal's tears? They appeared first on that blood-soaked day, when the barriers between worlds tore open and the Rakir emerged. When those ancient horrors poured from the sky like black rain, their midnight bodies darker than the void itself, and hope seemed as distant as the stars themselves. But hope, my young friends, often wears the strangest armour. In all the histories of our realm, in all the chronicles kept in the great libraries of the Empire, there has never been a battle quite like this one. Never has there been a fury like Validus's, never a cry like the Empress's, never a love that could turn the very tide of war itself. Some say the ground still trembles where they made their stand, that, on quiet nights, if you press your ear to the earth in that valley, you can hear the echoes of 10,000 voices crying out their Empress's name. The luminescent ichor of the Rakir that soaked the soil that day left patches that still glow under the new moon, nature itself remembering their victory. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it began, on that crimson morning when the sky split open and our world changed forever, when an empress with hair of spun gold and her marshal in midnight armour showed us all what it truly means to love, to fight, and to triumph. It began like this. The acrid smoke of battle churned across the valley as dropships pierced the crimson sky, their crystalline hulls fracturing the dawn light into blood-red shards. From their depths emerged the Rakir, ancient terrors born in the space between stars. Their bodies were darker than the deepest void, absorbing light like pools of infinite darkness. Their segmented forms moved with terrible grace, each motion accompanied by the sound of grinding crystal. Wave after wave of these cosmic horrors poured forth, their razor-sharp limbs clicking against their midnight black carapaces, their presence alone seeming to dim the very sun. Empress Diedre stood defiant, her obsidian armour with its gilded trim catching the dying light like a dark star. Her golden hair, once tamed in an intricate warrior's braid, had broken free in the chaos, whipping around her face like spun sunlight. At her side, Grand Marshal Validus towered in his titanium alloy plate, a behemoth in black armour that made him appear more siege engine than man. Arch-reactive plates shifted across his massive frame with each movement, the armour's ancient runes pulsing with a subtle crimson glow. They fought back to back, their movements a deadly dance honed through years of combat and marriage. But the tide shifted. A surge of Rakir separated them, their midnight forms creating a maze of living darkness between husband and wife. Diedre held her ground, Stormweaver, her ancestral blade, singing through the air as she carved through their ranks. Yet for each monster she felled, two more took its place, their forms emerging from the shadows as if born from darkness itself. Their obsidian claws found purchase in her armour, dragging her down beneath a writhing mass of night-black horror. From across the battlefield, Validus saw her fall. Something primordial awakened in him then, a fury older than civilization itself, born of love and terror and desperate need. The Worldrender, his massive Zweihander forged in the heart of a dying star, became an extension of his rage. Those who stood between him and his Empress died in fountains of luminescent ichor, their midnight bodies shattering like dark glass against his armour. Then came the leap, a moment that would be immortalized in song for generations. Validus's battle cry shattered windows for miles as he launched himself across the battlefield, his impossible arc carrying him to the centre of the Rakir swarm that threatened his beloved. The impact alone crushed a dozen of the creatures, their bodies exploding into clouds of midnight shards. What followed wasn't combat, it was annihilation. The World Render became a hurricane of steel in Validus's hands, each swing cleaving multiple Rakir into obsidian rain. His eyes blazed with an inner fire that turned hardened veterans pale. The berserker rage transformed him into something more than human, something that made even these ancient horrors hesitate, their dark forms seeming to shrink from his fury. Diedre watched transfixed as her husband, her rational strategic Marshal, became an avatar of destruction. Her aureate tresses were now slick with the Rakir's luminescent ichor, turning her golden hair into streams of molten metal that whipped around her face. The sight of Validus's savagery awakened something within her own warrior's heart. She rose, and from her throat came a battle cry to match his own, a sound of primal fury that carried across the battlefield like thunder. The army's response was immediate and deafening. 10,000 throats took up the cry, a cascading wave of sound that shook the very ground beneath their feet. Stones trembled, weapons vibrated, and even the Rakir faltered, their midnight bodies resonating with the frequency of human rage that threatened to split the sky itself. Together they became twin maelstroms of death. The Empress's blade wove patterns of silver light, while the Marshal's sword carved arcs of darkness. Their synchronized brutality inspired their troops, igniting a chain reaction of courage and controlled savagery throughout the ranks. The army seized this moment, this display of their leader's ferocity, and surged forward with renewed purpose. The tide turned. The Rakir horde, for the first time since they emerged from the void between stars, began to retreat. When the last echo of battle faded, Empress Diedre and Grand Marshal Validus stood atop a mountain of shattered obsidian corpses, their black armour slick with otherworldly light. Her once golden hair now glowed with an otherworldly iridescence from the Rakir ichor, creating a crown of living light around her fierce visage. Validus's massive form loomed beside her, his armour's runes still pulsing with the echoes of his rage. Their chests heaved in unison as the battle fury slowly ebbed. Below, their army gazed up in reverent silence, witnessing their leaders transformed into living legends. Validus moved with the same decisive power he'd shown in battle. His gauntleted hand caught Diedre's waist, pulling her to him with an urgency that spoke of both victory and desperate relief. Their armour met with a clash of metal, but neither cared. His other hand cupped the back of her head, fingers threading through her blood-luminescent golden hair. Watching as the ethereal glow made each strand shimmer like threads of starlight and gold, he claimed her lips with a kiss that rivaled their battle fury in its intensity. It was a kiss born of war and survival, of protection and partnership, of relief and triumph. The luminescent ichor, coating their armour, glowed brighter, as if even the essence of their fallen enemies acknowledged the power of this moment. Diedre's hands gripped the edges of his massive pauldrons, returning the kiss with equal fervour, their shared adrenaline and love creating something electric between them. When they finally broke apart, their eyes blazing with the remnants of battle rage and passion, they turned as one to face their army. The sun at their backs cast their silhouettes in sharp relief, the towering Marshal and his warrior Empress, their armour gleaming with otherworldly light, standing amidst their victory. In perfect synchronization, they raised their weapons skyward, Worldrender and Stormweaver crossing high above their heads, still dripping with the luminescent blood of their enemies. The army's response began as a whisper, then grew like an approaching storm. "Diedre!" The first cry shook loose stones from the nearby cliffs. "Diedre!" The second made the very air vibrate, the dropships creaking under the sound's pressure. "Diedre!" The final cry was deafening. A roar of 10,000 voices united in devotion and triumph, echoing across the valley like rolling thunder. Birds took flight from distant forests, and the remaining Rakir corpses seemed to shudder under the sonic onslaught. The sound carried for leagues, telling all who heard it that this day would live forever in legend, the day the Empress and her Marshal turned the tide through the sheer force of their combined fury and love. The echo of their victory cry lingered in the air like the afterglow of lightning, marking the beginning of a tale that would be told and retold for generations to come.